Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Saturday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early. It's 9 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. I had not planned on making this video whatsoever, but I'm at a place right now this morning, and I'll give you an idea of how I led up to this moment to make this video. I'm not sure if I'm going to download this today. Today's March 11th, Saturday, 2023. Or maybe tomorrow, or if I'll download it ever. I'm not sure. This morning, I was watching I was working out on the treadmill, and I was watching the usual show, Intervention, one of my favorite shows. If you don't know, I'll say it one more time, that I am a recovering addict. I have over 16 and a half years of being completely clean and sober from addiction, hardcore addiction. I've been clean and sober since October 23rd, 2006. As I was watching this show, if you've ever seen Intervention, almost every case, I don't know, I'm gonna guess here, but I'd say 90% of the cases that are on that show, they go back into the childhood and what led up to these people becoming addicts. I guess at least 90, maybe even more, 95% of them were molested as children. This happened to me. My father died when I was 9 years old of terminal brain cancer. My mother started dating a year or two later. She dated one policeman, and that didn't work out. He was a nice guy. Then she dated another cop. We lived out in the woods, and we were right on the town line. And policemen knew that my father passed, so those cops would come out to check on the widow and her kids, and something ended up developing between my mother and this policeman. And I never liked this guy right from the beginning, and he ended up molesting me from the age of about I'm not even sure when I was probably about 11 when it started, up to the age of 14, maybe almost 15 years old. And even as I say that right now, 15 years old, there's a part of me that still carries a lot of guilt with me, and that's what I really want to talk about today. Down below, I'm going to have numbers for adult survivors of child abuse. If you're an adult and you were abused, okay, let me talk about this. If this happened to you, a lot of us carry guilt from this, especially guys. I think this is one of the reasons I might have survived all the years of drug use, that I survived to talk about this. A lot of guys, especially, and girls, don't like to talk about this because they feel guilty. Especially guys, because they think it gives them the stigma of perhaps being a homosexual or bisexual or something like that, or somehow they were at fault, or they must have done something to bring this on. And all the people, because I've been around a lot of people that this has happened to when I was using, and the guilt that comes along with this. This is what I need to say. If this happened to you, you were under 18, and the person was over 18, then it was not your fault. No matter what, it was not your fault. Even if there was times where it felt good, even if there's times where you went along with it, even if there was times where you actually saw it out, it was not your fault. There's no guilt there. You were a victim of a predator. There should be no guilt there. I've learned that this guilt, a lot of times this guilt will end up in using drugs to cover up self-loathing. Even now, as I sit here, I've come to terms with all this. I know it wasn't me. It was this guy. I can look back at 57 years old. I could look back, and I could see the ways I was manipulated. This man was over 40 years old, and I was 12, 13, and on top of that, I had just lost my father. I remember this guy telling me, my bike had broken down, I think, and he said, Daryl, your dad's not here, but I'll be there for you, Daryl. Now that your dad's not here, I'll be there to help you, fix your bike. And I think about what kind of monster would say that, to a kid that lost their father. I hung out through all my years, teenage years, my 20s, my 30s, all the way up till 40. When I was using, I dated and I was around girls that a large percentage of the girls that I was around that I dated had been molested when they were younger. Sometimes it was their stepfather, their father, and a lot of them carried a huge amount of guilt because part of them thought it was their fault. They thought, they would confide in me. They would say, there was part of them that kind of enjoyed the attention. They were getting more attention than their sisters or this or that. And as an adult, you realize, that you were being manipulated. No matter what, it was not your fault. Like I said, no matter how much you went along with, after a certain amount of time, this happened to me for years. I remember fighting. I remember hiding. At 11 years old, how do you come out? How do I come out? How do I go to my mother and say, your boyfriend, the cop? Well, he's trying to grab my private. How do you do that? And the biggest fear is that somebody's going to say it's your fault, or the worst fear is they won't believe you. I didn't actually talk about this. I didn't actually admit this to my family till I think I was probably around 36 years old. I carried this with me, and it tore apart my life. A good portion of the drug use and the mayhem that went on in my life was because there was a little part of me that blamed myself. After a while, even the most abnormal thing feels normal. I think that as human beings, this happens. You tend to normalize things just so you could survive, just so you don't go insane. And after a while, there was times when I would leave the house and this guy would pass me a note or whisper to me right when my mother was in the other room, meet me down the street or something like that. And after a while, you end up doing it. And I felt guilty. I felt that I was going along with this, that I was part of it, 50-50, at 12, 13 years old with a 45-year-old cop. It got to a point with me where he gave me rolls of quarters. Asteroids was a big thing back then. And he would give me rolls of quarters, $10 or $20. Now, back in 1978 or 79, 10 or $20 to a 12 or 13-year-old, it's a lot of money. And I took it, and I knew, even at that age, I knew what a prostitute was, and I started to look at myself like that, and part of me thought that I'm going along with this. It's my fault. I feel guilty. Part of me would think that, I put a slur here, a slur word for homosexual. That's how I would talk to myself sometimes. Daryl, you're nothing but a blank. And it leads to self-loathing. It leads to destruction of your life. You have to understand, it is not your fault. It never was your fault. Guys, girls, men, women, if this happened to you, if you were under the age of 18 and the person was over 18, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there's no situation whatsoever where it is your fault that you should feel guilt, even if you came out and asked and pursued it. A responsible, moral adult would know what to do if something like that happens. You bear no guilt in this whatsoever. Guilt will eat you. It'll rot your soul, just like they say, anger's like acid, that it eats away the vessel that it's stored in. So is guilt, believe me. Like I said, and even to this day, there's still a little voice. When I just said, it happened until I was 14 or 15, there's a little voice inside of my head that said, you should have done something. At 15, you should have done something more. Daryl, you blank, and there's still I admit it, there's still a part of me. There's still a little part of me way deep down. I say this because I know there's other people out there that feel the exact same way I do. After I do videos like this, I get comments that say, dude, thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to talk about this. And And the reason that I'm brave enough to talk about this is because I know these things aren't true. I bear no guilt in any of this, and neither do you. And like I said, women tend to do this to themselves too. They look at themselves as dirty, And if you were a child, if you were under the age of 18, you did not have you have no guilt to bear. You did not have the consent to give. It was not up to you in any way, shape, or form, no matter how much you still believe it was. You bear no guilt in this. You are a victim. Down below, there'll be different groups that you can call or email or join, survivors of sexual assault, adult survivors of sexual assault. There'll be groups down below. I sat in on some groups, but I wish I had called these numbers. I wish I had these numbers when I was younger, because I ended up destroying 25 years of my life due to self-loathing and blaming myself and guilt. Don't let it happen to you. You're not at fault. Have a good Saturday.